This
my favorite.
I'm going to tell you. So full disclosure.
Yes.
Full disclosure. Roy Jones Jr. is my personal GOAT. He is the greatest talent that I have ever seen in the sport. Just my personal opinion, right? Greatest talent I've ever seen.
Yeah.
There are some, he is one of my favorites. I tell people know me. I'm a Chicago native, live and die with Chicago sports. Derrick Rose is my favorite basketball player ever. He's not the best, but he's my favorite. So Derrick Rose Mike Tyson is
more than MJ.
Derrick Rose is my favorite.
Okay.
So
I heard Rich, not the best, but he's your favorite.
Not the best, but he's my favorite.
Okay,
Mike Tyson is to boxing for me what Derrick Rose is to basketball. Mike Tyson's maybe my favorite fighter, but I do realize he's not the best. He's not even the best heavyweight. He's not the top 5 best heavyweight in my personal opinion.
Okay.
But Roy is to boxing what Michael Jordan is to basketball for me, which makes sense that he, was with Jordan Brand. Right. So I try to communicate on Twitter. So if anybody wants to talk to me on Twitter, make sure you look here at Unique Mazique. Talk about combat sports video games. I'm always there for it. I'm there for the Chicago sports conversations too. But someone was talking to me and they were trying to really discredit Roy Jones's career. Basically told me.
And you gave it time?
I gave it time to a point.
Okay.
I gave it time to a point. I don't get this. I really don't get this argument, man. We're talking about he beat a young Bernard Hopkins. He beat him, but that's how he won the world title. James Toney's gonna be a Hall of Famer.
Right.
Masterfully beat James Toney. Whether people realize it or not, Virgil Hill's a Hall of Famer. Y'all must have forgot. Knocked Virgil Hill out with a body shot. Yeah, that happened. Mike McCallum's a Hall of Famer.
Body snatcher. Mike McCallum. Yep.
When he fought Montiel.
Technical loss.
Yes. No, the second fight. When he fought Montiel.
Had him shaking and twitching.
Montiel was 26-0 and a world champion when he beat him.
Yeah, first round, vengeance.
A lot of people don't realize how good Reggie Johnson was.
Right.
Reggie Johnson was a good fighter. He was a unified champion.
Man, this guy had you in your feelings over here. I mean, you're defending Roy like it's your girlfriend.
You mess with Roy, you're gonna get these hands.
Yeah, I see that.
So I mean, I know you probably have had like some ringside experiences watching Roy. I would love to hear you tell me about, like, I love hearing people's like favorite watching Roy in person stories.
Right. I mean, Roy, first of all, let's just take it a step back. Roy was the victim of flat out robbery and corruption in the Olympics. Should have been a gold medal winner.
Yeah, it was 88, right?
Yeah, in Seoul. He was the gold medal winner. And even his opponent admitted that it was just, he doesn't know how that happened. But then it came out years later that it was corruption and it was robbery.
Yes.
So let's just say won the gold medal. Like you said, going in the pros, middleweight, super middleweight. Light heavy. Hey, let's not forget, he's the first fighter to go from middleweight to heavyweight, beating John Ruiz.
Yeah. And
along the way, he was the most naturally, athletically gifted fighter that I've ever seen in person. Yes. And I love Pacquiao, but and I feel that Floyd is such a special, skilled, talented fighter, right? But what I'm telling you is that Roy Jones Jr. athletically was better than anyone that I've ever seen. The speed, the quickness, the ability for you to know the punch was coming and still couldn't do a damn thing about it. Okay? Just couldn't do a damn thing about it. And when he wanted to put his foot on that gas pedal and get rid of you, you were gone. And the competitiveness, the mindset, the dog in him. And that's what I loved about Roy.
Yeah.
The dog in him. his alter ego, right? How he would refer to himself as RJ. Okay. And that was the guy in the ring. I got to see him train. I was able to see him train during his prime. The work ethic, the relentless, mean spirit inside that ring, the showman. I don't even believe Roy Jones Jr. lost many rounds. I'd be interested to see how many rounds he actually lost. Now, yes, later in the career, he got caught by Tarver. Okay, I mean, Glenn Johnson knocked him out with a jab. I mean, clearly the decline had happened.
Yeah, okay? Anything after 2003 doesn't even matter.
Remember, boxing is the only sport where we use the term a fighter gets old overnight.
Yes.
And literally from one fight to the next. And we've seen it happen with so many fighters, right? And so in this case, I just, I think you gave way too much credence in wanting to even defend Roy's record. I mean, Roy fought everyone there was to fight during his prime. I guess maybe we would have wanted to see Joe Calzaghe during his prime, right? I mean, I'm just trying to think like
Darius Michalczewski was one fight that he kept getting called out for.
Right.
Darius would only fight him if he came over there to fight him.
Right.
And Roy was like, why would I?
Right.
I'm Roy.
Right.
I mean, I'm the pound for pound champ. I'm the pound for pound champion. Everybody, so you didn't tell me you haven't fought anybody.
You tell me who's going to run the table from middleweight to heavyweight ever again.
I can't imagine the person.
Xander Zayas.
Well, you know what? It'd have to be somebody like Xander, who is already so tall and is clearly not as big as they're going to get.
Right, but remember what Roy made up for. See, Roy wasn't, Roy was tall but not heavyweight tall.
Right.
He fought the right heavyweight.
The right heavyweight.
Yeah. Okay, but his speed. I mean, speed kills, baby.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the only other heavyweight that would have been an interesting fight and I wouldn't have really wanted to see this for Roy's sake, just because of the size, is Holyfield, because Holyfield wasn't a big heavyweight either. But yeah, that probably was pushing it a little bit. That was probably pushing it just a little bit. So, but yeah, it brought up another very interesting component to me, because, and this is a theory that I've always had about Roy. Is Roy did so many things unconventionally, right? What it just that you would say are technically wrong, but he was able to do those things because of how gifted he was, because of how physically gifted he was. But I also think that that's the reason maybe that he wasn't able to be as great as long as, say, a Bernard Hopkins, who didn't necessarily depend on the sheer athleticism to remain in that elite status like Roy. So for Roy, I'm barely slipping this punch. But me barely making you miss keeps me in a position to counter back and to have an impact with a counter punch, or just that barely slipping somebody keeps you in a position to counter better. And as those instincts start to leave and the reflexes start to leave, then those punches that you used to barely slip or barely make miss, and you're able to put to counter, he's not making those guys miss anymore. Is that kind of what you think happens with a fighter? I mean, obviously it's not a lot of guys like Roy, but do you kind of see that with him?
I mean, it's really simple. I was at Jones Tarver 1, which people felt was a questionable decision. And in the rematch, Tarver stopped Roy Jones Jr. With a punch that Roy Jones might have been able to slip a year or two earlier. Maybe the hands would have. There just becomes a point where physically the body just diminishes, and that just, it happens to everyone. Look. Come on. What's the other expression we like to use in boxing? There's only one person in boxing that's truly undefeated, and that's Father Time.
Father Time. Yeah.
And I just think that was you got to look at people in their primes, and you got to look at people as to who they fought and who they beat. And at the rate that they fought, you know, and put all of those things and take that into consideration. I mean, Terry Norris lost to Keith Mullings, and you know, we were set up for bigger things back then after that fight, and he got stopped. I mean, you know, Keith Mullings is not going to be on someone's, you know, top 100 list of best junior middleweights in the history of boxing.
Yeah, but he's the answer to a trivia question if you're talking about Terry Norris.
I mean, and there's a lot of cases like that.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot of cases like that. Like I remember Mark Breland not being able to get past Marlon Starling. You know, just couldn't. And I mean, even the late Vernon Forrest just having Shane's number, having his number. You know, it's a lot of fights like that. No, and obviously Vernon Forrest and Marlon Starling are better fighters than Keith Mullings, but just an example.
Look, you know? And even more so, Brian, that, and I mentioned this, you know, early on in talking about Roy, even more so with a fighter that relied on his physical attributes.
Yes.
A fighter that kept his hands down at his waist, that put his chin up in front of you, that goaded you in to missing, to get counterpunched by 3 left hooks before you set your feet. And had power.
I loved it. I loved it.
You know, the triple left hook. I mean,
yeah, man.
I mean, and what? So when that style doesn't change, but yet the physical attributes diminish, hands down, chin out, just not being able to slip a punch at the rate that you're able to slip it a year or two earlier. You know, those things catch up to guys like that. You know, versus a guy like Floyd, who has maybe great defense, which will help you have longevity.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
You know, being able to just be a master at the defensive art, you know, not relying so much on the physicality as much as, you know, skill, ring IQ, etc. I'm not saying Roy didn't have a high boxing IQ. But he just was physically more gifted than anybody that he fought.
Everybody, he was like a superhero. He was really like a superhero, and it was great to watch. And it was one of those things that if you were privileged enough to be experiencing it while it was happening, whether even in person or even at home watching it live, you knew you were watching something that you wasn't just going to be able to see again next year or the year after that.
You know, and I make this other point to people, which I worked with Derek Gainer in the early 2000s. In fact, his last world title shot against Chris John, we were working together. And at the time, you know, Roy had one trainer up until the end of his career when he brought his dad back into the picture. But he had Alton Murkison, who was trainer of the year. Who else is Alton Murkison trained besides Roy Jones Jr. that had success? Derek Gainer. Okay. And then the heavyweight, I forget his name, Gabe. He never really turned. Remember Roy was Roy's friend?
Yeah. I can't remember. I can't recall his name, but I see his face.
Right. The point I'm making is that I think a lot of guys could have been in Roy's corner. Nothing against Alton Murkison. I mean, he obviously did a great job with Roy. But the point I'm making is that when it's like, I'd say the same thing right now. You could take Freddie Roach. You could take 10 other guys. You put them in Manny's corner. I don't think much would have changed.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is it was Roy's just ability that really made the difference.
Yeah. It's actually almost a lot. It's a lot like what we were talking to Buddy about. These fighters make trainers make fighters. And so clearly, if you got Roy Jones Jr., I don't know how much I don't know how much he actually needs, you know, especially before 2003.